Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lunch table. I'm Evan. I'm joined with Nick, and today we're going to be talking some NBA. The NBA finals are tomorrow, as we're recording this on Wednesday. And we haven't talked about the NBA really much at all, but we've been glued into the playoffs, and we're coming to the end. We have the Pacers playing the Thunder, but before we dive into that, we're going to talk about some other things. Um, First being the biggest news that just came out yesterday was the Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau after they made the conference finals. They finished the last two seasons, I believe, with 50 plus wins. Um, and they got bounced in the conference semis last year and the conference finals this year. So, Nick, what was your reaction to that move? Do you think it was good or bad?
I think that it needed to happen. Uh, I think that's the consensus with most Knicks fans too. Is that okay? He's run his course. Like I just don't think Tibbs' style of coaching is conducive to winning in the modern NBA, where you run the same starting lineup almost every game. You only really play like seven dudes, valuable minutes. I just don't think it works in the modern NBA, especially with the way this current Knicks team is constructed, where it's like Jalen Brunson is a dog. He's going to get close to 30 a night. But outside of that, you don't really have like another elite second option on offense. Like Cat every once in a while will come out and drop 30 a game. But in terms of like offensive production when it matters in the postseason, he's been very inconsistent throughout his career. And obviously, every Tibbs team is going to be swarming on defense, but like in the modern NBA, you have to have a good offense. You have to be able to shoot basketball. And his teams kind of just aren't really conducive to that, especially ever since like the Derrick Rose Chicago days. Um, I would say getting this Knicks team to the conference finals was a pretty significant accomplishment for him. Like I didn't really expect the Knicks to be. I thought the Knicks could lose in the first round against the Pistons. To be truthfully honest with you, and I get people say, "Oh, Tatum got hurt, and the Celtics lost that series more than the Knicks won it." Yada yada yada. Fact is, the Knicks made the conference finals, which is no small feat. It's the first time in 25 years they've done that. But I do truly think that the Tibbs era in New York has run its course. Um, I just like I don't see enough improvement from 2022 to now. Like it's a 3-win improvement and or no 4-win improvement, and then you make it to the conference finals instead of the conference semifinals. He's had his time. The Knicks, I don't really think are in a like title contending position, which is what they want to do right now is to win a title. That's why they traded for Mikal Bridges. That's why they traded for Cat. They're doing everything they possibly can to win a championship while Jalen Brunson is at its peak. And I just don't think the coaching style of Tibbs is going to be conducive to that. So I think it was the right move. I think it was kind of like a mutual decision between the ownership, the coach, and the fan base. I think everyone's just kind of ready to go in a different direction in regards to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was the right move. I mean, if you look at it, like you can ask, like they just made to the Eastern Conference Finals, like why would you fire him? But if you look at his track record of success, um, he really hasn't had too much outside of those Chicago days. But I just think, like you said, his play, like his coaching style, and how he kind of just runs his teams into the ground, and really just refuses to play the bench as much as he can, isn't very conducive to success come playoff time. You have a lot of not apparently it wasn't super apparent this year, but last year, they had a ton of injuries just because their starters just played so many minutes. But I think a big thing is, like you mentioned, the Knicks went out and made a bunch of win now moves this offseason, getting Cat, trading a bunch of picks for Mikal Bridges. And I think they expected to be better than they were, even though they had a successful
He had a
season though.
successful year by all things considered. Yeah.
Yeah, but like Mikal Bridges was up and down. Cat was really good offensively, but defensively in the playoffs he struggled. And it's just the kind of the same thing that happened last year where the team's good and they just run out of steam towards the end. And honestly, to a team that most people, they've gained the respect, obviously, of people now. But if you were to tell me heading into the playoffs that the Knicks would lose to the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, I would have probably not believed you. But um, yeah, I think it's just the way that Tibbs runs his team, and I think with just the win now moves that they made, they really needed to um they just needed to have a better outcome than they did. And I think with some players having up and down up and down seasons and really not getting the production that I'm sure the front office hoped for, you're going to blame the coach more than you're going to blame the players. That's how it is in professional sports. So I think it was the right move. We'll see how it ends up if Tibbs goes somewhere else or who they're going to get. But I think I think it was a necessary move because I'd have never really thought that Tibbs is that great of a head coach.
He is like the quintessential, like old school, hard nosed, like gritty head coach, which is fine if you play a bunch of guys and you like spread out your minutes more than between 6 or 7 people. I think it was on display during the Pacers series where the Pacers they obviously stole game one and then they closed it out better in game two. And then after going down 2-0, then you want to put in Mitchell Robinson, who is a non-factor on offense against one of the best offensive teams in the league when you've been running the same starting five for the entire season. I just don't get it. They won game three, but I would say that for the first like 3 quarters of that game, they were dead in the water because they couldn't score. And then Cat kind of went off in the fourth quarter. But by that point, it was too late because obviously the Pacers, after game three, the home team won each game, which is kind of what you expect when you get to that point. His tactical like prowess is not where it needs to be. Like Rick Carlisle dominated him game one, switching every possible thing and getting the ball to the hot hand and Aaron Naismith at every possible opportunity. After game three, where they just ran the death, they just ran the crap out of the Knicks, and they didn't give them a chance to set their offense, which is what they did in games like one and like a little bit of game two, and then they just went away from it in game three. But like I just Tibbs got out coached in that series tremendously. If you watched all those games, which I was lucky enough to be able to, it shows that there's levels to this, and he's just not at the level that the Knicks need right now to truly compete for an NBA championship.
Yeah, and with a team that has Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, guys like that, and your struggle scoring offensively is
Alarming.
pretty alarming. And I think just the way that the Pacers played, they played that super fast tempo. Tibbs is more of a slow pace guy, and Brunson is a slow pace. I mean, Cat struggles to get up and down the court at times. So it was just like the young guns running around, and they just couldn't keep up. And that goes to, like you mentioned, just Rick Carlisle out coaching Tom Thibodeau. So who do you think? Um, I've heard some people say that they should look at Jay Wright, the
I've
former
heard Jay
Villanova
Wright.
coach.
I've heard Dan Hurley. I've heard Michael Malone. Um, I think that I don't think Jay Wright is going to leave his gig in the studio to be the Knicks head coaching job, but I think the Knicks should at first give him a blank check because not only is he one of the best, not just college basketball, but basketball coaches we've seen in like since the turn of the millennium. He's also from the area. Same thing with Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley, I feel like, is a bit more abrasive, so that might rub some of the players the wrong way. But those two guys are from New York. If there's one job in the NBA that I think they would take, it is to return the Knicks and Madison Square Garden back to the top of basketball, where that arena belongs, to be quite frank. And then Michael Malone, obviously, he's won a championship with the Nuggets. He's not going to have a player of Jokic's caliber, but he knows what he's doing. So I don't think that's a bad option. Any of those three guys, and I think you're elated if you're a Knicks fan with the direction that they want to go.
Yeah, and I mean with Jay Wright being the Villanova coach, having coached Mikhail Brunson, Josh Hart, 2 national championships at Villanova, already has familiarity with those guys, and obviously those guys can vouch for how great of a coach he is, and they all love him. And so I think if he does end up, if they do reach out to him and like he does make the step, I think it would be pretty good because I mean, one of the best college coaches in recent memory, and he had so much success with the core guys that the Knicks have, basically. So it wouldn't be like he's walking into a situation where,
He's completely unfamiliar and he doesn't know
yeah,
what's going on.
and so that would kind of help ease the process to move up because obviously coaching college basketball and coaching professional basketball is very different, and great college coaches have struggled in the pros, but I think it would just make that transition so much easier already having familiarity with 3 of the core players, and being able to kind of work with them, and then they can obviously kind of help you out as you go on. But obviously the Knicks job is going to be a very sought after one just because it's in New York, and which is a huge market, and they've had a lot of success recently compared to what they were not too long ago. So I do think there's going to be a lot of candidates that we're going to probably hear for in the next coming weeks. I'm interested to see who those are. As once the season ends, I'm sure some coaches will probably get fired, or there'll be some head coaching changes, I'm sure. But I'm interested to see what happens with that because I mean they have a great core of guys. They just need the coach to kind of put it all together and you know take
Maybe
them
one or
and
two like
elevate
shooting
that
depth
step.
players as well.
Yeah, they do need shooters, but they're definitely in a better position than they were before they got like Jalen Brunson and those guys. But they did go all in, so they need to nail this head coaching hire so that way, um, you know, their trades can come to fruition because they give up a lot to get guys like Mikel and mainly him, but
And
and Cat
if
as
they
well.
nail the head coaching hire, I think next year the East is wide open. To be
Yeah,
truthfully honest with you, with especially with Tatum being out for the entire next season, pretty much because of the Achilles that he tore. Like obviously the Pacers are going to be there. Cleveland's probably going to be there. I would say Orlando, if they can stay fully healthy, are going to have a dark horse. But if you nail this head coaching hire, you've got just as good of a shot as anyone to make it to the NBA Finals. And once you get there, it's like okay, anything can happen. It's a 7-game series, so um, I think this is one of the biggest off seasons in recent history for New York.
yeah, I would agree. Let's talk about briefly just the conference final since we haven't really talked about it. Um, since we're talking about the Knicks, we'll start with them. What did you think of that series against the Pacers and the Knicks? Obviously, that game 1 was historic, but what were your overall thoughts? And obviously, I'm assuming probably a little bit surprised that the Pacers,
I
made it as
was
far
not,
as they
I
have.
was not surprised that the Pacers beat the Knicks. To be truthfully honest with you, um, I think that Game 1 was one of the most like heartbreaking losses in Knicks history. It has to be. Knowing how the series went, knowing that you lost 4 games to 2, if you close that game out, you get a Game 7 back in your home court. It's got to be one of the most devastating losses in team history. Um, and outside of Game 1, I felt like the Pacers were just one step ahead of the Knicks the entire time. They've had the better head coach. Tyrese Halliburton had like one bad game in Game 5. Pascal Siakam proves to be one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA, winning Eastern Conference Finals, averaging what was it, like 31 a game over the course of the series against one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. He's an animal. Um, I just like the Pacers just play such a eye popping, like eye catching brand of basketball where they push the pace, they run you to death, they move the ball constantly, they've got shooters everywhere, and they just need essentially a field general in Tyrese Halliburton to make sure the ball gets where it needs to go. And I think the Knicks' lack of offensive depth and consistency really showed in this series, because there were numerous times in this series, especially in games 4 and 6, where I was like, the Knicks just can't keep up with the pace the Pacers are running in. Um, and it's like they play two different brands of basketball, but they play in the same league. Like you're gonna have to counter whatever the best throws at you in order to win a championship. I do think that I had a thought and now it's gone. I think that they were fortunate to even be there. I will give them credit for the way they closed out games 1 and 2 against the Celtics. Um, but I mean, Knicks fans are going to call me crazy because like the Knicks literally beat the Celtics in a 7-game series this year, but I still think the Celtics are a better team when they're fully healthy. I don't think they're going to be next year because they're not going to have their best player, but and truthfully, I don't know what the Celtics are going to do going forward, because by the time Jason Tatum gets back, a lot of their guys are going to be 2 years older. Who knows if guys like Drew Holiday and all them will even be on the team. So they'll have a chance next year. I just thought the Pacers were one step ahead for most of the series. Rick Carlisle, I alluded to it, just dominated Tom Thibodeau tactically. And yeah, I just don't think the Knicks had the bodies to truly keep up with the speed the Pacers were throwing at them. So I think that kind of just sums up how that series went.
Yeah, I think after that game 1, that was the big kind of that was the big thing that, kind of set the tone for the series. Like the Pacers, not a lot of people thought that they were going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals when the playoffs began. Tyrese Halliburton was called the most overrated player in the league. And they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals after, beating the Cavs, but they were down, what was it, 20?
It
In that
was like
first game, or
it was like a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter, and it was like a 9-point lead with like 2 minutes left or something.
Yeah. So I mean, the Knicks were pretty much, they were handling the game well, and then like Aaron Nesmith just became prime Steph Curry and just hit
5
everything that
like
he was putting up. And then you obviously have Tyrese Halliburton hitting that buzzer beater to send it to overtime, and doing the Reggie choke celebration in New York with Reggie on the call. I really wish that would have been a 3. That would have been legendary.
Just about to say that. If that was a 3, that would be one of the most iconic shots in the history of the sport. It already is, but like considering the Pacers even won that game. But if that was a 3, oh man.
Yeah. But I mean, it just felt like the Pacers were just running all over the Knicks. The Knicks at some point just looked defeated. Obviously Siakam played phenomenal. Tyrese played really well. Miles Turner played well. Nesmith stepped up. They're just such a deep team, and I think the general public kind of overestimated that heading into the playoffs. And I forget what stat it was, but I think when Andrew Nimhard was guarding Brunson, he shot like 33% from the field or something. And so when you have a guy like that who can just take their other opposing team's best player out of the game, that just helps so much. And it's just the depth of the Pacers really is just super impressive, how they've kind of built this team from the draft. And obviously getting Halliburton was a huge piece, and he's stepped up and had a lot of big and clutch plays during this playoffs. But yeah, I mean, it was just super impressive to watch them play. I agree with what you said. Their style of play is very fun to watch, just because it's fast, the ball's flying around, and they shoot the ball at a high level, which obviously the Knicks struggled with. But I think we're in for a good finals. I mean, some people are probably going to knock it just because it's the Thunder and the Pacers.
Those people don't like
those
basketball.
People are idiots. Yeah.
No. If you are not a TV executive at ABC, you should not care about who is playing in the finals, especially because these two teams, I think, are the two teams that deserve to be here. Like this isn't like some injury like riddled run by either one of these teams. Both these teams have been the best team in their respective conferences since like January. And for the Thunder, it's been all year, which we'll get to that in when we talk about our finals preview.
But yeah, I mean, the Pacers being in the finals, wasn't really pegging that to be a thing for a little bit, but I'm happy about it. They're a fun team, and I love how they play. I like Tyrese, um, and Miles Turner and Pascal. Pascal low key is, if they
if they
win
win this series,
finals, he has a good resume on his hand.
he'll
Two
probably be a Hall
time
of Famer.
2-time NBA champion, then Eastern Conference Finals MVP and multiple, All-Star games and
With
stuff.
two different teams too. That's the most impressive thing about that.
Yeah. I mean, the way that the Pacers really just built this whole thing with, getting the big piece in Halliburton, and then knowing that you have to pair him up with another star, so trading for Pascal Siakam, and then, hitting on your draft picks with Miles Turner, Andrew Nembhard, and then they got Aaron Nesmith in the throw-in deal, with the Celtics a while back. And even guys like TJ McConnell play big roles. They're so deep, and from like start to finish. And Obi Toppin played a lot of good minutes. He was a kind of a disappointing player with the Knicks, and they got him for cheap, and he's kind of revitalized his career. So it's just great what the Pacers are doing. They've been coached super well, and they're just a super fun team. And I'm excited to see, how this series goes between them and the Thunder. But speaking of the Thunder, how did you feel? Obviously, this was the less exciting of the two conference finals, but how did you feel about that series?
I thought that the Thunder's true test was Game 7 against Denver, where it's like, okay, you're playing the best player in the world. He's having a pretty fantastic series outside of like one game. You're young. You haven't really been in this spot. Game 7 on your home court against a former NBA champion with the best player in the world. How are you going to respond? And Chet and J Dub and Shea and that whole team essentially said it doesn't matter. Like, we're just better than you. That's just the reality of the situation. We're just better than you. And then they dominated the Nuggets, like dominated, like it wasn't close past the first half. At that point, I was kind of like, okay, the Thunder are going to go to the finals. And then they kind of just did the same thing against the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are much less offensively consistent than Denver is. Because, like, when Jokic is on the floor for Denver, their offense is going to be one of the best in the league. Ant hasn't reached that level. He's probably never going to reach that level. Like, Jokic is one of the best offensive players you've ever seen. But the fact of the matter is, Anthony Edwards has to get more consistent on offense in order for the Timberwolves to take that next step. It's very similar to what the Thunder have had with Shea, where Shea was like, okay, yeah, he can run an offense, but he's inconsistent shooting the ball on offense, and he's gotten better and better, and now this year he's had one of the all-time great seasons by any player in NBA history. In order for the Timberwolves to reach that next level, Ant is going to have to get better on the offensive end. And because the Timberwolves aren't as offensively consistent as Denver, the Thunder defense was dominant. Dominant. Like they couldn't do anything when they were in Oklahoma City. And I would say that the big thing with the Thunder this year has been their shooting is inconsistent, just across the board. But against that, in that Timberwolves series, like they were shooting the ball really well. Like they weren't missing a ton of open shots. And if that's the case, it's lights out for the Pacers. I'm just gonna be honest here. If the Thunder are shooting the ball as well as they shot the ball against the Timberwolves, I don't think the Pacers stand much of a chance. It was very apparent from like midway through game 2 that the Thunder were just a significantly better team. And barring an injury to Shea, they were just going to wrap up that series very quickly. Game 3 in that series was kind of like, what the heck is going on? Because the Timberwolves just could not miss. But it was apparent that the Thunder were just a significantly better team. And the Timberwolves were this is the ceiling of their current team. And the only way they're going to get better is if Ant gets more consistent on offense. And the Thunder are just an all-time great team. So I kind of expected that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder have been the best team in the NBA since the
Since
beginning
the
of the
opening
season.
tip of game 1.
Yeah, they were best team offensively, best team defensively. I think they're like one of maybe 5 or 6 teams that I think have won like what 70
They
something
are one
games
of
in
like
a
6
season,
teams that have won 80 games in a
or
season, I
80
think.
games. Yeah. So they're on a historic pace right now. And yeah, I mean, their biggest test, like you said, was that Nuggets series in game 7. Um, and then they were able to pull that out. And a lot of people were like, oh, well, if, they're struggling with the Nuggets, like, Ant's going to have his way. But that just wasn't the case. I mean, like you said, Ant is a great player, but he's obviously still needs to improve on his consistency. And um, they didn't shoot the ball well really at all. Um,
Didn't take
mainly
care of the
mainly
ball
mainly
either.
due to, yeah, they turn the ball over a lot. And I mean, what's most impressive to me about the Thunder is obviously they're a great defensive team with like Lou Dort, and you have Chet as a rim protector, Isaiah Hartenstein,
Caruso off
um,
the bench.
and
Like,
Caruso. But like when I'm watching those games, like in the sets where they have Case and Wallace and Caruso in there, there's just nothing that the opposing team can do, because both those guys are just so quick with their hands and so good laterally. They're just such great defenders. And I mean, Caruso is like, when you mold a role player, and he's the perfect role player. Like, he plays super hard, is an outstanding defender. He's a great energy guy, and obviously, he won that championship with the Lakers in 2020, and he was an integral part of that. And now, um, the big offseason trade that the Thunder made was to get Caruso for Josh Giddey, and I think that trade has helped tremendously. Just giving them, I mean, he's their oldest player on the team at 31, which is insane. But he's just such a good role player, and he complements that team super well. And I think it helps because, Shea isn't like, his calling card isn't defense, his calling card is offense, because he averages like 35 a game or whatever. But they have guys like Lou Dort, Kaysen, and Caruso who are amazing perimeter defenders, and that just helps them out so much. And I just think that, I mean, they're just another team that just has so much depth, and and even, I mean, Jalen Williams for majority of these playoffs hasn't played like as good as we expected. The last couple of games he really started to turn it on, but it was really kind of just Shea, and then Chet had some big games, and from there. But I mean, the Thunder are just such a good team from top to bottom, and it's super impressive that they're playing this well, being so young. Um, we knew that they were kind of on the doorstep of becoming a great team. I mean, were they the 1 seed
yeah,
last
they
year,
were the
or
one seed last year.
yeah, and then this year they're just just taking over. And I mean, with the Thunder, or excuse me, with the Timberwolves, just not really having much offense outside of Ant. And when you play a great defensive team like that, I mean, I think like, Julius Randle was fine, but I mean, I think their second best player in that series was probably Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He played really well offensively and defensively. But the Thunder, they're just a buzzsaw. They've been the best team since the tip. They got the MVP. And Shea, if they do win the finals, I'm assuming he'll probably win Finals MVP. So he has a chance to be the second point guard ever to win MVP, um, win NBA championship, and win Finals MVP.
He also won
Magic
the
Johnson
scoring
is
title
the
this
only
year
one.
too.
He did. He just has had a phenomenal season, and yeah, I mean, we'll talk about how we feel that series is going to go. But the Thunder are very good, and the Timberwolves are also good. I agree with you. This is their ceiling. They've been to back-to-back Western Conference Finals and really haven't had much of a showing in either of them. So um, they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board. But they got some pieces for sure. Um, I'm just happy that if it was Thunder Knicks, obviously there would have been a good series. But the amount of foul calls that would have been between mainly Brunson and Shea, I think the Shea narrative is kind of
It is.
over talked about. But the Brunson thing is real. That makes me so mad when he like flicks his head back. But that would have been interesting to see.
I don't think that Knicks. If the Knicks had won the finals, I genuinely think the Thunder would sweep them. I just like.
Yeah. I mean, the
I
West
don't
is
think
just
that
so
would be
much
a
better
good
than the
series
East
at
right
all.
now. The West is just so much better than the East right now that they're more battle tested and they're just a way better team. But you know what's funny is because this is Pacers Thunder, this is the Paul George finals. So I'll explain why. So obviously Paul George, great pacer when he was there in the 2010s. Made it to a couple Eastern Conference Finals, but never really got over the hump because of LeBron.
Took prime LeBron James to 7 games, by the way, in one of them.
Did. And then obviously he had that really bad leg injury, and then came back, played really well, and then requested a trade out of Indiana, and he wanted to go to the Lakers, but the Pacers traded him to the Thunder on July 6, 2017 for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. And then they flipped those guys. They flipped Oladipo in 2021 for Karis LeVert and 2 second-round picks. And then they traded Sabonis in 2022 to the Kings for Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb, a second-round pick, and Tyrese Halliburton. So that kind of set the Pacers up. And then obviously we know the famous trade that the Clippers made to get Paul George from the Thunder back in 2020. Trading 7 first-round picks, and Danilo Gallinari and Shea to the Clippers. Which that honestly, I mean, when we talk about worst trades in NBA history, we talk about the Celtics Nets trade with Paul Pierce and all those picks, but this one very well could be
has to be up
worse
there. It has to be up
because
there.
because like this literally built the Thunder team. Like they got obviously Shea, who is now one of the best players in the NBA, just won MVP. I'm pretty sure they got Jalen Williams with a Clippers pick. And then I mean they've moved they've moved a bunch of picks around. But they've really just set their future up all off of that. And Paul George was very disappointing with the Clippers, barring that one Western Conference Finals run a couple years ago. But yeah, it's kind of funny how, the ripple effects of one trade, can have an effect on both franchises. And now here, I guess 5 years later, or I guess, yeah, 5 or 6 years later, they're both sitting in the finals. It's kind of funny how that works out.
I have never, I still think the Luka trade is going to be worse because the Mavericks had genuinely no reason to make that trade at all. But they got the number 1 overall pick. They're going to get Cooper Flag, so it doesn't really matter. It's infuriating, but that's a different story. But I've never seen, because don't the Thunder have 4 first-round picks in this draft or something crazy?
Yes, I think they have 3 or 4.
This is what I'm saying. They are already an all-time dominant. They've had an all-time dominant season if they cap this off with a finals win. And they've got the assets to get another A-list superstar to add to their team, whether it be through the draft or trading, 4 first-round picks for a 35-year-old Giannis in a few years' time or something stupid. The scary thing about that is the Thunder can get so much better with the assets that they have and the age of their current core. And it's really off of one deal, which is crazy to me. And then obviously on the Pacers side, you trade Paul George away, you get Sabonis and Victor Oladipo, then you flip Sabonis to get Halliburton and a bunch of other stuff. Remember when people called that a win-win trade?
Yeah.
That has aged like milk.
Well, it was a win-win trade until the Kings did what the Kings do and traded away their best player. And, I mean, when the Kings were in the playoffs, 2 years ago. I mean, that sure looked fine, but then the Kings being the dysfunctional organization they are and screwed it up. But yes, I would say right now, the Pacers definitely won that
Yeah,
because obviously they're in the NBA Finals.
it's crazy how one player can like change the course of NBA history. I'm sure it's not the way Paul George envisioned it. I'm sure it's not the way a lot of us envisioned it in like 2012 when he was just breaking onto the scene. But he's impacted NBA history in a profound way. And it'll be interesting to see what
I
happens in the
think what's
future.
interesting is, I mean, if you look at the Pacers and the Thunder, kind of in the mid 2010s, both of those teams were very good. And obviously, the Thunder made it to the finals. The Pacers made it to the Eastern Conference Finals multiple times. And then they ended up like losing all of those players. Russ got traded, KD left, James Harden left, and then the Pacers lost Paul George. They had, and then now we're sitting here and they've completely rebuilt, mainly from the draft, barring a few trades here and there. But it just shows that, with those, I mean, those two teams, like losing those great players, they were able to, you know, I guess, come back from that, um, and make a championship. I mean, I'm sure
It
when you
shows the like competency of the front offices there in both
yeah,
Indianapolis and Oklahoma City. Sam Presti is a like
genius.
genius. Like he's going to probably be a Hall of Fame executive purely off of this season and the Paul George trade. And I highly doubt the Thunder are going to get rid of him over the next 8 or 9 years.
No, he'll be there as long as
Yeah,
possible.
and the Pacers have kind of been like, they remind me a lot of the Bengals. It's just that I think they've been more consistently decent as a franchise, but the Bengals have had more like high highs, because this is only the second finals appearance in Pacers history. But I feel like the Pacers have just been like more consistently like decent as a team over the course of their history. But they are run pretty solid. And like Rick Carlisle said, in 49 states, it's just basketball. In Indiana, it's a way of life. So yeah, I'm rooting for the Pacers in this series because I think it would be the equivalent of like the Bengals or Browns winning the Super Bowl, where you've got a state that obsesses over one sport, and the professional sports team in said state at that sport has kind of had a mediocre or not great history, but they finally get over that hump. That state will explode. Um, but I just it's cool to see two smaller markets finally getting representation like this, especially in the NBA, who actively does not care about their smaller market teams. They're the only professional sports league where that's the case, which is crazy to me. So yeah, it'll be a fun series. I think we'll look back at this in like 5 or so years time and be like, yeah, no matter how the series goes, it'll be like, oh, it's neat that we kind of got this.
Yeah, and regardless of the outcome for either team, I mean, if the Pacers lose, they've made it to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals. They know they can hang with anybody in the East. And then the Thunder, obviously, if they lose, they're still super young, still have a top 5 player in the league, in Shea, and they really can only get better as just they mature and continue to grow. But let's talk about the NBA Finals. So Pacers Thunder. How do you think this series is going to go? And then I guess at the end you can give your prediction on who you think's going to win and how many games it's going to be.
I think the series will be very fun to watch. I think both teams like to go up and down the court. Obviously, the Pacers, like, that's their whole identity. They're called the Pacers. They run you to death. But the Thunder also like to push the ball a fair bit because they're both young. Both teams are very young, very up and coming teams with a star leading the way. I think that the big problem for me is the Pacers have dudes that Shea can attack. Like Andrew Nemhard obviously locked up Jalen Brunson, and Jalen Brunson's a dog. Shea is a different beast. Like you're going from an all NBA caliber player to a genuinely all time level great at scoring the basketball. Um, which I think Nembhard will do well, but like if they switch off of Nembhard, like who is that second guy that's going to be able to slow Shea down? Tyrese Halliburton, obviously not great defensively. Naismith, not great defensively. Obi Toppin, not great defensively. Miles Turner can do a job, but he's not very good guarding in the mid range and on the perimeter. I think Shea's going to dominate. To be truthfully honest with you, I would be shocked if he doesn't average like 30 a game. And then from that point on, it's really, can the Thunder hit their shots? Because they're going to get open looks with the way these two teams play. If they can hit their shots, I think this series is going to be over quickly. That being said, I think that if the Pacers, this isn't going to like, they don't want to slow the game down. That's not who they are. But I think with a team that is as defensively sound as Oklahoma City, you're going to have to slow it down a little bit and trust your field general and Tyrese Halliburton to make the right decisions, which he's been doing all postseason long. It's one of the all-time most intriguing matchups on one side of the ball when you got the Pacers offense versus the Thunder defense. I think that'll be obviously a joy to watch. At the very least, we're going to get that for 4 games, which is must-see TV. I do think that there is a world where Shea just kind of goes off and the Pacers try throwing everything at him and they just can't slow him down. And then when they try to double him, guys like J-Dub and Chet and all them will just go off because there's no one guarding them. So I think the big thing for this series is, can Oklahoma City shoot the ball like they did in that Timberwolves series? If they do that, I don't think the Pacers stand much of a chance. And I want to be clear, this is not me like downplaying the Pacers. Like, the Pacers are legit. They deserve to be here. In most other years, I would give the Pacers a real shot to actually win the finals. And they've been doubted on all year, so who knows? Maybe they come out and shock the world. This would be one of the craziest finals upsets ever. But the Thunder are an all-time level buzzsaw this year. Like, no one has been able to slow them down. They had the second best net rating by a team in NBA history. I think they have lowered opponents' like average points per game in the playoffs by 12.5 points per game, which is like the best in NBA history for a team that's made the finals. Like, this is an all-time level defense that you're running into with the Pacers or with the Thunder. So I just, if the Thunder shoot the ball well, I don't expect this series to go super far. If they don't, I think the Pacers could steal, a game or two in Oklahoma City. And if they do that, then who knows what happens. They could take this a lot farther than a lot of people think they can.
Yeah, well, I think Vegas agrees with you. They give the Pacers plus 530 odds to win the NBA Finals, which they gave the Jets a higher chance to make the playoffs, which is funny. But yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be an entertaining series. The both atmospheres are going to be absolutely electric. Obviously, I think the Thunder have the best playoff atmosphere in the league. Their fans are just so
They're so sick.
passionate,
Yeah.
and like they just ramp it up to a different level when it comes to playoff basketball, and the Pacers do as well. And so I think it's going to be a super fun matchup. Obviously, like we've been talking about, both teams play similar style, but I just think the Thunder defense is going to be what pushes them over the edge. I think Caruso and Kaysen and Lou Dort are going to have good series, and I just don't think that the Pacers have enough weapons to kind of, push through that. Because like you said, with the Pacers, all right, you have Andrew Nembhard, but when you switch off but if you get switched off, who's guarding Shea? With the Thunder, if let's say Cason Wallace is guarding Halliburton, he gets switched off to Caruso, and then Caruso gets switched off to Dort.
Yeah.
Like they just have so many great perimeter defenders, and I think Hartenstein and Chet can guard Turner better than the Knicks were able to, because Cat really can't go out in the perimeter very much. And Chet, being as, I guess, lateral and how
He's very lanky.
lengthy he is. He can play some perimeter defense if he has to, and I know Miles Turner likes to spread the floor. Um, yeah, I just think the Thunder just have too much firepower. I mean, no one stopped Shea all season, and I don't see that happening in this series. I mean, he's averaged like 32 points in regular season. I think he's averaged close to that in the playoffs as well. Um, but I wouldn't be entirely shocked if the Pacers steal a game in OKC. I could see that happening. Kind of how the Timberwolves were, where they just have a game where they just didn't miss. Um, I could see that happening, but I mean, I'm super excited for this series. I know it's two small market teams, but I think that's what's fun about it. Is it's two teams that haven't been there in a while and haven't won a championship, and so I think it's gonna be good. But I just think the Thunder are just too deep of a team and too good of a team, and they have the best player in the series, which obviously helps. Um, so I would probably give the edge to them. I would say 5 or 6 games. I think the Pacers could push it to 6, but I'd probably say more 5 if I were to
Yeah, the
guess.
big thing for me is that the Thunder shot the ball very well against the Timberwolves, and that is the most recent basketball that they've played. So I think it's going to be Thunder in 5. I think the Pacers will have a game where they just don't miss from shooting the ball, and everyone's going to be like, oh, the Pacers, they might have a chance, but it'll be unsustainably good. Um, and the Thunder are just too good. They're just too good.
Well, if we saw anything from that Timberwolves series, like, I mean, when they lost that game 3, you know, I mean, they got destroyed, and then they came back and immediately answered and did the same thing to the Timberwolves. So, yeah, Shea, I think, is gonna have a great series, and then he'll solidify himself as one of the best players in the last couple of years. Um, and I mean, just go on a limb here and say, let's say the Thunder do win the NBA Finals. Do you think there's a chance that there's a new dynasty forming
Oh,
with them?
absolutely. I think it started last year. To be truthfully honest with you, when they were the 1 seed, um, this I alluded to this earlier. The scary thing about this is they can get so much better. Like they're not going anywhere. Most of their guys are less than Shea's 26, and like J Dub and Chet are not even 25 yet. They've got like 6 first-round picks over the next 3 years or something absurd. Um, like they're not going anywhere. I'm not Obviously they're gonna have to win more than like one ring to officially be certified as a dynasty, obviously. And who knows what'll happen with injuries and like other teams making moves. This offseason is gonna be crazy in the NBA. I think a lot of like stars are kind of disgruntled or at a standstill with their teams. So who knows what the NBA landscape looks like coming October or this time when like March comes around in 2026 or something. But the Thunder are not going anywhere. I am fully confident that they are here to stay for the next decade plus, because of the amount of capital that they have. So I'm not ready to call them a dynasty yet, but I do think that they are going to be the next all time great like team in the NBA over the next like at least 5 years.
I think it'd be interesting to see, how this team looks going forward, because with the new NBA rules on like the second apron and stuff like that, it puts a cap on what teams can and cannot do. And I think it could become an issue, but what envision happening is the core 3 stays together, and then they just use those draft picks to recoup role players. Um, because I mean they've pretty much hit on, I would probably say, 80% of their draft picks since getting Shea. I mean, there's been a couple misses in there, obviously, but I would say for the most part they've done pretty well. So I mean, I would think like guys like Isaiah Joe and the other Jalen Williams, and like guys like that, they probably won't be on the team long term just because you can't pay everybody, especially if you'll probably have 3 guys with huge contracts. Um, so I do think it could get interesting to kind of see how they do their finances because like we kind of mentioned it briefly, but like the Celtics, like they have a lot of players. I think they have 4 or 5 players that are getting like 20 plus million a year or something. So to get out of the second apron, they're going to have to probably trade some of those guys away. So I think that the next couple of years is when the Thunder will probably have their best window, just because we know that their core guys are going to still be there. And before, all 3 of them get max contracts, the team could change a little bit. But I mean, when you have that many draft picks, it really helps. It makes you feel more comfortable heading into the future, because if you lose some of your role players, you know that you can recoup them with future draft picks, and you're hoping that they can kind of hit. So, I mean, Sam Presti's put this team in as good a position as you could hope for. He's shown a masterclass blueprint on how to rebuild a team. And yeah, I think if they do win this, I would say they're obviously going to be the team to beat for a while, because I think the Celtics are going to look a lot different in the next couple of years. And nobody in the East really, I mean, yeah, nobody in the East is really like striking me as like they're going to be around for a while. That's going to be, I mean, I guess the Pacers, maybe the Cavs, but the Bucks are probably going to blow up.
If Giannis stays in the East, whatever team he's on will be, there.
Yeah. But then, I mean, in the West, you'll have the Nuggets are always good, the Timberwolves, the Spurs, if they handle things correctly, they might start getting in the mix soon. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how the landscape goes. But yeah, I definitely think if the Thunder do win this, the dynasty hype will be alive and well, because just how young of a team they are. I'm curious. I don't know I'm curious to see like what the youngest team to ever win the finals was, and if it would be the Thunder this year. I would assume it probably.
What's their average age? Like 25 point.
Something like that. But yeah, I mean, for them to be already in this position is crazy. But yeah, I'm excited for the NBA Finals. Obviously, NBA Finals is always a good time. I can't say I watch as much basketball as I used to, but when the playoffs rolls around, I always try to tune in as much as I can, especially with the finals. And with two teams, I'm a big fan of. Obviously, I'm a Kentucky guy, so I'm going to probably be rooting for the Thunder just so Shea can win a ring. And I like him. I've liked him since he's been in college, but it should be a great series. I'm excited to see how it goes, and then after this is when we really hit the dead spot of sports, where you just got baseball, and then I guess NFL training camp starts.
There's no international soccer tournament this year.
Month or 2, yeah.
To look forward to, we are going to be reaching the dog days after this and the Stanley Cup ends, which isn't always a great time. But then we can actually touch grass. So that's always, a pleasant time.
Yes. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and comment down below who you think is going to win the NBA Finals. And we would love to hear from you guys. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.